Very good evening, everyone. So, the topic which has been assigned today is to me is childhood obesity, and at the outset, I must thank Nitin for giving me the last moment opportunity. But I'll try to do justice to this important topic. But it's a huge topic. But I'll be discussing on this following headings actually. So, what is the menace of childhood obesity? How is the diagnosis done? The risk factors associated with it, impact on health, evaluation of a pediatric obese child, management in that sequence. So coming to the menace, we know that the childhood obesity is a big menace and it's increasing worldwide. If we take the IOTF cutoff, we can see both the overweight and obesity is increasing both in the developed and in the developing countries. And if you see the India, we have some data from 9 studies with 92,000 subjects, mostly school children, and they've found the prevalence of childhood overweight to be around 12.6%, and the prevalence of childhood obesity to be 3.39%. It has varied from different parts of India, and if we see the data from Dr. Nitin et al. From CMC Vellore, they have found 30% prevalence of overweight and obesity in Vellore itself. So coming to the diagnosis, that was about the menace and the problem statement. Now coming to the diagnosis. Remember that the diagnosis of childhood obesity is not exactly that of the adult obesity, and plotting the height weight on a growth chart or just calculating BMI is not going to suffice, and we have to plot the age specific BMI cutoffs in that graph. And how they have made is that as per the JCM, the Endocrine Society Clinical Practice Guideline, up to 2 to 20 years of age, we can plot in this age-specific BMI graph, where the normal BMI is between 5th to 85th centile, and from 85th to 95th centile, it is the overweight, and more than 95th centile is actually the obese. So if a 10-year-old boy comes with a BMI of around 22, so he might be actually obese, he's not overweight. So that's how the BMI cutoff actually may predict differently, and we have to plot in this particular graph properly. Extreme obesity has been defined as BMI if it is more than 120% of the 90th percentile, or if the BMI is more than 35 kg per meter square. Similarly, class 3 obesity if the BMI is more than 140% of the 95th percentile, or if it is more than 40 kg per meter square. For 0 to 2 years of age, the obesity is defined as if the weight for recumbent length is more than 97.7 percentile as per the WHO growth standards. In 2021, we have the IAP recommendation of pediatric obesity just released some 3 days back on the World Obesity Day, and they've actually endorsed to use the IAP chart by Khadilkar et al., the modification at 2050. And they've actually told that if the BMI of the child is more than 23rd adult equivalent, then it is overweight. More than 27 adult equivalent, the red line, it is actually obesity. So that's how we diagnose childhood obesity. Now coming to what are the risk factors. We all know about the risk factors. They are ethnicity. Parental obesity is a very important factor. Maternal malnutrition or obesity, maternal hyperglycemia, birth weight, unhealthy diet, and physical inactivity. So ethnicity is very important, and this particular landmark study has come from Yagnik way back in 2014, where he has actually told that compared to a white Caucasian newborn, the Indian newborn has got more visceral fat and lesser lean body mass. And that's how the ethnicity predisposes for childhood obesity. This is another nice study by Baxi et al., who have actually correlated the parental obesity with the child's obesity, and they have taken father-child pair and the mother-child pair, and they have tried to find out the correlation and the p-value, and where they found that the maternal weight and the maternal waist circumference have been significantly correlated with childhood obesity or the pediatric obesity. So effect of maternal malnutrition during pregnancy, we know that pre-pregnancy underweight increases the risk for small for gestational age and low birth weight. Pre-pregnancy overweight or obesity may lead to large for gestational age and macrosomia. And both HG and LGA babies are at risk for obesity. And Yagnik et al. Have told a nice U-shaped curve for mean birth weight and the prediction of childhood obesity. So for a particular given birth weight, which is ideal, the childhood obesity is less. But for low for gestational age or large for gestational age, the chances of obesity increases exponentially. Breastfeeding and obesity decreases the odds of type 2 diabetes. We know breastfeeding decreases obesity and overweight also by 13%. And there is no association of breastfeeding with cholesterol or blood pressure. Unhealthy diet, no need to explain more. We all know that this is an important environmental factor that leads to childhood obesity, and similarly, the physical inactivity. But what is more interesting to find in this particular study, that when they've compared the different parameters of the sedentary lifestyle, they found that the sleep hours, which is more than 8.5 hours, or the TV viewing or the screen timing, if it is more than 1.5 hours, have been significantly associated with childhood obesity. Sleep duration is very, very important, and for each age group, if the sleep duration is suboptimal, then they tend to increase weight and they land up in childhood obesity. Coming to these are the risk factors we have discussed. Coming to the impact on health. Now, childhood obesity or the childhood BMI is an important independent risk factor for obesity in adults. And in this study, they found that if the child is overweight or obese at 1 to 2 years of age, the odds ratio of obesity at adulthood is around 1.3. But if there is an adolescent obesity, that is between 12 to 15 years of age, if the child is overweight, then there is a significant increased tendency for developing adult obesity, and the odds ratio is around 17.5. Childhood BMI in presence of CVD risk factors, it has been shown that as the centiles or the BMI percentiles goes on increasing, the number of risk factors for cardiovascular disease goes on increasing. So if the childhood BMI percentile is more than 99%, then almost 59% of these children have more than equal to 2 CVD risk factor, and 33% of them will have more than equal to 3 CVD risk factors. So that means both the BMI centiles and the CVD risk factors run linearly. Childhood BMI and risk of coronary artery disease in adults have been shown in this particular study, and they've shown that childhood BMI can predict the adult onset coronary artery disease, and it has been linearly associated, and it is more marked for boys compared to girls. At each of this age, when the BMI increases, they have more chances of developing coronary artery disease in the future. Apart from the coronary artery disease or the CV risk factors or the CV mortality, the childhood obesity is associated with other comorbidities like polycystic ovarian disorders, obstructive sleep apnea, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, gallstone disease, musculoskeletal disorders, pseudotumor cerebri, and also various psychological problems. So that was about the impact on health. Now coming to how we are going to evaluate a child with childhood obesity. I have already told that merely detecting a BMI is not important. We have to plot it in that BMI specific chart. After that, the Endocrine Society Clinical Practice Guidelines in 2017 have mentioned that after we have plotted the graph, and if we find the BMI is more than equal to 85th centile, then we need to take a proper history and physical examination. If the history and physical examination is abnormal, then we must do additional evaluation based on the findings. Suppose there is an attenuated growth velocity, and as an endocrinologist, we all know that if the child is obese and he's not tall or he's short, then we need to rule out endocrine causes like hypothyroidism or Cushing, so that we can do. If neurodevelopmental abnormalities or severe hyperphagia is there, as Dr. Nihal Thomas's talk he has given on that particular aspect, then some genetic evaluation needs to be done. If there is history of CNS injury, then probably hypothalamic obesity is a cause. Then you need to evaluate for any psychiatric abnormality, or if the patient is on any antipsychotic drugs, then we need to reevaluate, we need to substitute different drugs, and we need to talk to the psychiatrist also. If everything is normal, then probably we are dealing with an exogenous obesity. And if comorbidities are present, we need to initiate with the lifestyle changes, and specific treatment for comorbidities are to be given to the patient. Continued weight gain for more than 6 months, we can start with a pharmacotherapy. I'll be discussing when we should start with the pharmacotherapy. And if there is weight loss and stabilization, maintain that lifestyle modification. And if the evaluation of obesity, there is no comorbidities, we can continue with lifestyle modification alone. The Endocrine Society clinical practice recommendation for pediatric obesity also explain that if the BMI is more than equal to 85th centile, then we have to evaluate certain things. Like we have to evaluate for presence of pre-diabetes or diabetes mellitus, dyslipidemia, hypertension as per the cutoff of the pediatric population, NAFLD, polycystic ovarian disorders, obstructive sleep apnea, and the psychiatric evaluation. So these are the evaluation can be done for a pediatric obese patient. Coming to prevention, I'm talking first prevention because the first part of the treatment also involves the preventive strategies like lifestyle modification, diet, and exercise. For prevention of obesity, the Endocrine Society practice guideline clearly mentioned that clinicians should promote and participate in the ongoing healthy dietary and activity education of children and adolescents, parents, and communities, and that should start from the school itself. And the school should be encouraged to provide adequate education about healthy eating. I think that's very important, especially in part of India. Healthy eating habits should be encouraged, like avoiding consumption of calorie-dense foods, nutrient-poor foods, soft drinks, sugar-sweetened beverages, fast foods, and all those things. Encouraging consumption of whole fruits rather than fruit juices. The 2021 IAP guideline starts with a very nice punchline, and I just wanted to mention that they mentioned obesity doesn't run in families, but in families who do not run. And they've actually given some very practical tips how we can encourage the healthy eating habits. Eating together as a family inculcates the better food habits compared to eating alone. And no one, including children, should eat while watching TV or mobile, including the adults in that family. Feeding should not be forced. That is, we cannot tell the child to eat this, eat that, and don't eat this. Rather, we can actually, children love colors. If we can decorate the food and we change the color of the food, then they actually like. So these are the practical tips they have given. We have to avoid SSS foods. They are salt, sugar, and saturated fats. Have regular meal and snack time. It's not that the snack time varies. We must designate a time for meal and snack for these children. And breakfast should never be missed. And the child mimics parents, so the parents should inculcate good practices regarding weight management. Physical activity, the IIP 2021 again recommends 60 minutes of moderate to high intensity physical activity daily. Most of the daily physical activities should be aerobic, and they must perform activities those strengthen the muscle and bone at least 3 times per week. And that is usually for people who are after 5 years or those who are adolescents. Prevention of obesity, as per the Endocrine Society clinical practice guideline, healthy sleep pattern is important. And I have shown a study where the sleep has been directly related to obesity. And we recommend that balancing the unavoidable technology screen timing for children is very important. And we have to involve the entire family, address the family stressors. School-based program and community engagements are very important. And we must encourage breastfeeding to the infants because breastfeeding has been shown to reduce childhood obesity. The 2021 IP guidelines goes a little further, and they've again given some nice tips that parents are the children's role models. So they should practice for first getting good weight and good food habits. A family being active together and having meals together is often in the happiest family, and that should be inculcated in the daily activities. Physical activities in children like jumping, aerobics, and push-ups can be offered to these children. If you have any TV in your child's bedroom, then please remove it. That is another tips they have given, and that's an important tip. Also ensure that none of the family members, including the children, watch the TV while taking meals. And the community should provide conducive environment and the safe environment for the children to play. So coming to the last part, that is the treatment in short. The treatment of childhood obesity as per the clinical practice recommendation, diet and lifestyle modification should be ensured, and I have discussed about the diet. Pharmacotherapy for children or adolescents with obesity only after a formal program of intensive lifestyle modification has failed to limit the weight gain. The recommendation is against using any obesity medication in children and adolescents who are less than 16 years of age and who are overweight but not obese. Clinicians should discontinue medication and reevaluate the patient if the patient doesn't have a 4% lowering of the BMI reduction after taking anti-obesity medication at least for 3 months or 12 weeks at the medication's full doses. Only drug for pediatric obesity that has been approved is Orlistat, which is available in India, but this drug is FDA approved for treatment of obesity for adolescents of more than equal to 12 years of age. Role of bariatric surgery is very limited in pediatric obesity. Child having BMI of more than 40 kg per meter square or having BMI of more than 35 with significant extreme comorbidities uh, can be offered a bariatric surgery. But extreme obesity and comorbidities persist despite compliance with a formal dietary and lifestyle modification with or without pharmacotherapy. The patient should have attained at least standard 4 or 5 pivotal development and must be within the near final adult height. Otherwise, do not offer a bariatric surgery for this group of children. No surgery for unresolved substance abuse, eating disorders, or untreated psychiatric disorders. There is access to an experienced surgeon in a pediatric bariatric surgery center of excellence. So, I'm really skeptical whether we have such pediatric bariatric surgery units in India or not. But if it is there, then only we can do in those centers. So with that, I'll end my talk. Pediatric obesity is an important menace. It is associated with many comorbidities. Fortunately, it is preventable. Lifestyle modification and behavioral therapy are very essential. Pharmacotherapy and bariatric surgery have limited role. Prevention is always better than cure. So we should do prevention rather than getting a treatment for pediatric obesity. So with that, I'll end my talk. Thank you for the